Well, should we start, Keryn?
Yep, let's go ahead.
Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Doré. I'm the chair of the Department of Geological Sciences at BYU. We'd like to welcome you to our annual Quay Hebrew lecture, and we appreciate the Hebrew family of supporting this annual event in memory of their son, Quay. Tonight, we're very pleased that Keryn Ross is our speaker. I'll introduce her in just a second, but to start our evening off, we'd like to begin with an opening prayer. And Keryn, I believe your husband, Brad, will be the one who will give us that prayer.
Yes, he will.
Brad, if you would, please.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank thee so much for the privilege it is to be able to connect over technology, even though we can't be physically together. And we're so grateful for the privilege it is to learn at this great university. We pray that thou will be with us tonight, that we can understand the things that Keryn will teach, and we pray that she can speak clearly and say the things that she wants to share with us. And we're so grateful for all those people who have sacrificed to make these things possible. These things we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brad. Keryn was born and raised in Las Vegas, and she obtained both her bachelor's and master's degree here at BYU. We have a room in our main office where it has bound copies of all the master's theses that have been done in our department over many years. One of those is Keryn's. And to me, for several reasons, hers stands out in a remarkable way. Mainly because Keryn was always one of our very best students. There's no doubt about that. But during her graduate program, Keryn got married and started a family, then took a bit of a hiatus in finishing her degree. But she was determined to finish, which she did in a wonderful manner. So whenever you want to be inspired by someone who has the tenacity and the stick-to-itiveness, then you can think of Keryn. She's been a wonderful example to anyone who desires and wants to obtain further education. So we're very pleased to be associated with her. Several years ago, in conjunction with Jeff Keith, one of our retired faculty, Keryn and Jeff established a course, Geology 105, Diamonds and Gems, which has since received general education credit. So it's becoming an increasingly popular course, and hence Keryn is well qualified to tell us tonight about diamonds. So Keryn, welcome. We thank you for taking the time, and we turn the time now to you.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited to have this opportunity. And I just want to say again, welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming to this lecture. I hope we'll have a good time. Just to let you know that I'm going to make it so that that everyone is automatically muted in this meeting. And so if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I will either address them as we are going through the lecture, or I'll address them at the end, and we can do, a question and answer type thing at the end. I just also do definitely want to thank the geology department for allowing me to put on this awesome lecture. And I also should thank the Geological Institute of America. Many of the pictures and diagrams that are on my slides are from GIA. And they are very, very generous in sharing all of their educational materials with the world with really no cost. I mean, you can take classes from them, and that does cost, but most of their information is just available on their website. So I encourage you, if you enjoyed this lecture, go to gia.edu and they can show you a lot of things. Also, if you enjoyed this lecture and you're a BYU student looking for a physical science GE credit, definitely consider Geology 105. We have a lot of fun in this class. We actually spend a great deal of time actually working with real diamonds and real gemstones, learning how to identify them and grade them. And the students always have a very good time being able to have the confidence when they come out of this class to know quite a bit about jewelry and gemstones and the geology behind them all. Well, let's go ahead and get started. And to get started, I want to ask a question. I want you to all ask a question of yourselves. Why diamonds? 75% of all American brides will wear a diamond engagement ring. And that number is very similar in Europe and in Russia. And in other parts of Asia, that number is rising considerably. They don't, in China and Japan and some of those countries on that side of the world, they don't necessarily have the tradition of having a diamond engagement ring, but probably through Hollywood showing the diamond engagement ring proposal and everything, it's becoming quite ubiquitous across the world. So, but why diamond? Well, it's a kind of a blend between tradition. The tradition is only 140 years old though, so we'll just keep that in mind. It's actually kind of a recent tradition, but it's also very practical. So we'll start by talking about that. But the very first thing I want to do actually is do a poll. So I'm going to ask you to please answer this question. So in Zoom, if you don't have the Zoom window activated, you won't be able to see the poll. And so if it's not coming up, but there should be a little thing for you to pick one of these. And basically what I want to know is if you were going to be buying an engagement ring in the next couple of months, what kind of gemstone would you plan on putting in that engagement ring? Or if you've already bought one, what kind did you choose? And so we'll give that a second for everybody to vote so that we can just kind of see where you are. And then I'm going to ask this exact same question at the end. And I'm kind of interested to see if there is a significant difference, if people change their mind through the course of this lecture. All right. Well, it looks like a lot of people have voted. I'll give you just another minute or two. I'll share with you one of the fun things we do in our Geology 105 class today. We actually are learning about how people pan for sapphires and diamonds and other gemstones. It's like panning for gold, only you're not looking for gold, you're actually looking for a precious stone. And so to do this, we actually get gravel from a place in Montana, a mine in Montana that has sapphires. And so the students actually pan for sapphires and they find these little tiny sapphires and they get to keep them. And so it's always one of the most fun of all the labs, because not only do they get to have the experience of finding these gemstones, but they also are learning some of the geologic processes and some of the more scientific processes behind those. So it's a fun thing to do. And that was today's lab. And so that was super fun. All right, I'm going to end the polling now, and then I'm going to share the results. So hopefully you're seeing these results, and it looks like that 50% of you either chose or are planning on choosing a natural diamond. And that's actually not too terribly surprising. There's some of you who aren't planning on giving or receiving an engagement ring at all. Many of you have chosen other stones. And the next highest looks like it's either a different gemstone or a synthetic diamond. All right, so we'll come back to that and see if we end up changing our minds throughout this lecture. And if we don't, that's just fine.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Oh, hello, Alexa. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that, everybody. I guess she felt like she needed to say something. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the tradition. The first known, like that we have historical record of, diamond engagement ring was actually given in 1477, and it was Archduke Maximilian of Austria, and he gave it to Mary of Burgundy. Now, this wasn't an unusual thing to give a ring, because at that time, rings were given, were exchanged for business contract purposes. This was a business contract. And as I'm sure you're all aware, marriages, especially between royal families, are often very much a business contract. So it's not unusual that he gave her a ring. But the thing that was kind of fun is that it had diamond in it. Now, this is probably what it looked like. This is a facsimile. We don't actually have the ring, but it's described as having the letter M inlaid with flat pieces of diamond. So this doesn't look anything like the traditional engagement ring that you know of and that I know of, but this is the first recorded engagement ring. Now, diamond engagement ring. We know that diamonds throughout the next several hundred years, there's spatterings of diamond engagement rings, but they're only reserved for the very richest of all people. And they're very rare. They aren't very common at all. And it's more traditional to have a different type of stone during pre-1800. It's more traditional to have a different stone in your engagement ring. However, post about 1870, 1880, this is when diamonds actually start flooding the market, because the first diamond-rich ore is found in South Africa. And now diamonds are common enough, they're not super common, but they're common enough for less wealthy people to actually have them and exchange them. And then one of the famous diamond companies in the world, De Beers, they are probably one of the most famous diamond selling companies in the world. They started an ad campaign that you probably recognize. It's considered the most recognizable ad campaign of the 20th century. And it's the one that says, "A diamond is forever." And so this is all part of like the tradition. It's like, oh, De Beers wants you to think that this has been going on forever and that everybody should do this. And you're not really engaged if you don't get a diamond. Now you can buy into that or not, but that's part of the tradition. Diamond engagement rings have gone through a lot of iterations through the decades, but also they're all pretty recognizable. If you see any of these rings, you could definitely think, yeah, that's an engagement ring. And of course, there's outliers, and these are just some of the common ones from these different centuries, from these different decades. But you can see that in the beginning, maybe having a really colorless diamond wasn't as common or as important. And as we get here to the 2010s, this is one of the more popular styles, is having just the big diamond with a lot of little diamonds around it. It's called the halo. And you can see that there's quite a lot of variety. And so it's kind of fun to think, oh, but each one of those, you still recognize that as an engagement ring. I mean, it still has that classic look to it. The other thing that's really interesting about a diamond engagement ring is it's super practical. Now, perhaps your idea of practicality is a little different. It's not practical in terms of it is expensive. But one of the reasons why it's so practical is because diamond is the hardest substance, natural substance known to man. And what do we mean by hardest? When we say that in a geological sense, we're talking about it resists scratches. And if you consider how much work you do with your hands, you pick things up, you lift things, you take out the trash, you go dig in the garden, you wash the car, you lift boxes, you're always using your hands to do these things. And if you have a ring that you're going to be wearing all the time, having a ring that has a stone in it that resists scratches is a pretty darn good idea. And one of the really interesting things about the way the diamond atoms are arranged, these are all little carbon atoms, but they are arranged with super strong bonds called covalent bonds. And it turns out that these covalent bonds make very, very, very strong, a very, very strong substance. And that's why it's kind of practical to have it as an engagement ring. Sometimes if you use a different type of stone in a ring, this is a ring that has an opal in it. And this is from around the 1910s. It was worn by my great-grandmother. And she was a housewife on a farm in a pretty rural part of southern Utah. And so it's very dry out there. She's working with her hands all the time. And she would wear this opal. And throughout time, this opal became very scratched and cracked. And now nobody can wear this ring unless they're willing to lose the opal, because the opal is so fragile. So something like an opal is not a good choice for an engagement ring, because you'd always be very worried about it and you wouldn't be able to wear it as often. Whereas a diamond, you have less to worry about with that. So now that we've kind of, this is why diamond, now let's start talking about diamond. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about where diamonds come from, like how are they formed in the earth? And then we're going to talk about how do we even get them out of the earth. We'll talk about what makes a diamond valuable. You probably know some of the reasons why diamonds are valuable, but maybe you don't know all of them. And then we're going to talk about some synthetic diamonds that are getting more and more popular on the market just in the last 20 years. In 1995, you really couldn't buy a synthetic diamond to put into a ring, and now they're everywhere. And then we'll also talk about diamond simulants. And what a diamond simulant is it's anything that's pretending to be a diamond. So cubic zirconia is a very common one for a diamond simulant. So let's get started about talking about origin of diamonds. Now, everybody knows that this is where diamonds come from.
You guys spare one of these? Sure, Superman.
It is Superman, isn't it? Are you kidding? Did you see us fly out of the sky? I was
See? He just created one, right? Whoops. So obviously, all you have to do is pick up a hunk of coal and squeeze it really hard with your superhuman alien strength, and boom, you have this gorgeous cut, like 30-carat diamond in your hand, right? Sounds very easy, doesn't it? Sadly, Superman is not where we get diamonds. Diamonds are actually carbon, pure carbon, that is crystallized under extremely high pressures and a certain temperature range that's pretty warm. And as it forms in those specific conditions, it creates this really actually quite attractive crystal. And so this is the traditional diamond shape, as you can see embedded in this rock. You can see it in this pink diamond. It has some more unusual shapes like this, and sometimes it can kind of be broken up. But it certainly doesn't look like what Superman created in his fist. Now, diamonds come in every single color, and I didn't want you to get thrown by the fact that I have a pink diamond on here. There's actually quite a few pink diamonds in the world. The rarest color of diamonds is green and orange and red. Those are the rarest ones. And the most common are brown and yellow. We'll talk about why those happen in a little bit later in this lecture. Now, if you've got some carbon and you've got those correct pressures and temperatures, well, where on the Earth do we get those high pressures and that specific temperature range? Well, and it turns out that where we find those being able to be created from the carbon, is a very specific area. It's called a stability field, and it's basically this temperature to this temperature, and it's this pressure to this pressure, or whatever. And if you were to try to take carbon and crystallize it outside of that stability field, you end up with graphite. And graphite is in your pencil, right? And it's so soft that you can rub it on a piece of paper and it rubs off, right? And that's the total opposite of diamond. And yet they're both made out of pure carbon. And so you'll see right here on our graph, you'll see this dotted line, and everything that is in these pressures and temperatures above here will create graphite. And everything that is below them will create diamond. What these gray lines are showing you is where we actually have Earth, where we have part of the Earth's crust, we call it the lithosphere, where we have that on the Earth. So like out here, there's no Earth's crust out here. So it's only in these gray areas that we can actually start forming diamonds. And we can only start forming diamonds when we're in the diamond stability field. So it turns out that most of the lithosphere is too shallow. And then there's another part of the shallower part of the Earth called the asthenosphere, and it's so hot that things are starting to melt, and diamonds aren't stable there either. So the only place, it's kind of like a Goldilocks thing, the only place that diamonds can form is in this very specific temperature range that is found in what is known as the cratonic lithosphere. And basically what the cratonic lithosphere is, it's the oldest, the coldest, the thickest parts of the continents. So let's look at this diagram of the continent. So this is totally stylized. It's not meaning any particular continent in the world or anything like that. But what it is it's showing you that in certain places on the continent, it can get very, very thick under parts of the Earth. So like this is where, you would be walking around. This is called the mantle keel. And it is this thicker part that is underneath the most stable part of the craton. The craton meaning, the continent. It's the most stable part of the continent. It doesn't have a lot of earthquakes. It doesn't have a lot of volcanic activity. It doesn't have mountain building events or anything like that. And these rocks that are in this craton are really old. They've been around since very near the beginning of the age of the Earth. So the Earth is 4.56 billion years old. And the rocks that we find in these cratons are 5.5 to 4 billion years old. And so it makes sense that the diamonds that can actually form in here, and you can see right here, this is our diamond stability field again, because here's everything that can form above here is going to be graphite, and all the carbon that's below here is going to be diamond. And so it's not surprising that all these diamonds, all the diamonds in the world, the ones that are on your engagement ring, they're really old. So if you look at your engagement ring and you look at your diamond, know that you're looking at something that's older than all the rocks you can see around you right now. As if you look up at the mountains here in Provo and you see them, those rocks are far younger than the rock that's on your ring, which is kind of a fun idea. So this is true. I should say this is true for 98% of all diamonds, that they form in this mantle keel right here in this area, beneath this coldest, oldest part of the continents. There are some kind of nifty diamonds that are called the super deep diamonds, and it's only 2% of the diamonds, but they're so much fun we have to talk about them because they're huge. Here is a facsimile of one of these super deep diamonds in my hand, and this is the largest diamond that's ever been found in the world, okay? It's called the Cullinan. And the interesting thing about the Cullinan is that it forms even deeper. So remember we said, 150, 200 kilometers deep for our lithospheric mantle diamonds that grow right in here. Well, these ones are bizarrely so much deeper. And they have a really weird, we think they were really formed in a weird situation where there's like liquid metal, iron, that has carbon dissolved in it. And then that carbon that's dissolved in it will somehow start to form into a solid crystal. And that's where we get these super deep diamonds. And the reason why they're so amazing is because not only are they huge, but they're also very pure. They're some of the most gorgeous, pure, colorless diamonds in the entire world. And they are generally found in like the crown jewels of Europe, places like that. This one here that I'm showing you the example of, this is the Cullinan. The Cullinan was discovered in South Africa in 1905. So, it hasn't been that many years since it was discovered. And the story of its discovery is pretty fun. So there was a diamond mine, and one of the mine managers is like walking around at the end of the shift, at the end of the day, and he's like making sure that everybody put away their tools and, all that type of stuff. And he notices off in the distance on the mine wall, he notices like the light catches something and it shimmers really, really brightly. And he thinks, oh man, they're doing it again, because apparently they'd been like, some of the workers had been taking broken bottles and stuffing them into the rocks so that people thought that they were diamonds, just as to play a joke. So he goes over there to try to pluck out that stupid broken bottle so that it's not there anymore. And what he pulls out is the Cullinan, a 3,100 carat diamond. Do you know what the next biggest diamond that's ever been found is? It's under 2,000 carats. So this 3,100 carat diamond, flawless, no inclusions, no flaws. It's got the perfect color. It's colorless and everything. And it was given to the King of England. And he had it cut into 9 major stones and a whole bunch of little ones. And the 9 major stones are ones that you are familiar with, because there's one that is in the Queen's scepter. It is the largest cut diamond in the world. It's called the Cullinan one. And it is, I wrote this down, it's 530 carats. Too big to wear on a necklace. The only place you can put it is in your scepter. So if you're Queen Elizabeth, you've got this one. And then the next biggest one is actually bound up in the imperial crown. And you can see it in this picture right here below the ruby. And so all of these super deep diamonds, you're not going to find them in your engagement rings, but I thought we needed to talk about them because it's the crown jewels. And of course we need to talk about the crown jewels, obviously. So we've got the formation of our diamonds. If they're either the super deep ones where they're like, 500 kilometers deep, or they're the shallower ones that are still pretty deep. We can't dig that deep. There's no way for us to get down that deep into the earth. So how do we get the diamonds if that's where they form? Well, this was a question that was on a lot of people's minds for a very long time. You see, diamonds anciently were never found in their original spot. So what we call, where we find different important economic minerals, is we call that the ore, the ore rock. And diamonds were never found in their ore rock. They were always found in rocks that had been eroded away from something else. These are called placer deposits. Basically what a placer deposit is it's a pile of gravel from a different rock farther away, and it's been moved down by rivers or things like that. And the source rock was never known. So for thousands of years, we've been finding diamonds, but we're never finding them where they actually, their source rock, their ore. This picture right here is showing you one of those. This is from Brazil, and it's showing you some pieces of gravel that have been glued together into a gravel rock conglomerate. And here is the diamond that's like just nestled in there with the other ones. It's just like this piece of sand, except for it's a diamond. This picture in the background is from Namibia, and this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And The Namibian is a desert. Okay, Namibia is a desert and it has these huge sand dunes. And somebody was out there and discovered that some of the sand wasn't regular old quartz sand. It was diamonds. So prospectors would go out there on their hands and knees with little tweezers and a little bag that was hanging down from their neck. And they would just crawl along the sand dunes and pick up the diamonds and put them into their little bag. Like totally amazingly easy to do. Although I'm sure it was really hot. So, I don't know how easy it was. But this was an easy way to pick up diamonds. Turns out that it wasn't always that easy, and it still isn't always that easy to mine placer diamonds, those ones that are in the river gravels, because it's a very backbreaking work, and you have to move a lot of gravel to be able to find just a very few bits of diamond. It wasn't until kimberlite ore was discovered in the late 1860s that we suddenly realized we could figure out how those diamonds got to the surface. So let me tell you that story, because it's a kind of a fun story too. Where it all starts, there's a place in South Africa. It was a very rural area in the 1860s and 70s. So you should be thinking like post-Civil War in the United States. That's when this is all happening in Africa. And there was a farm that was owned by several brothers named De Beer. Okay, that was their name. And they were actually really kind of very strict farmers. They didn't agree with a lot of secular stuff. They didn't think that you should be living in a city. You don't need a lot of money. You should be working in the ground and things like that. And one day, diamonds were found in their farm. And they were not pleased because diamonds were like the devil's lure to get all their children to leave the farm and go to the cities and stuff. And they're like, no, we don't like these. So they sold out pretty fast. Okay. So they left. 1 year later, 50,000 people are digging on their farm. And it's near the town, this very small town of Kimberley. And this was the first time that we actually could see the source rock where the diamonds come from. They were actually nestled in that source rock. So think about a farm. Everybody think in your mind of a farm. And then let's look and see what the De Beer brothers' farm looked like after just 1 year. This is what their farm looked like. It does not look like a farm anymore, does it? And keep in mind, this is 1872 in a very rural part of Africa. There are so many people here and they are all digging by hand. There's no steam engines. There's no anything like that. And then it gets even worse, okay? Because look at what happens just 10 years later. This is what it looks like. And here's the problem. This is somebody's claim, and this is somebody's claim, and this area behind here is somebody's claim, and all of these are owned by individuals. Now, think about like the old Wild West with the gold rush and claim jumpers, and I'm going to shoot you because you're trying to steal my stuff. You're not going to let Joe Schmo just walk across your claim to get to his claim. What if he picks up one of your diamonds? So they had zip lines. Literally, they had zip lines to get down to their claims, and then they would have to use a really complicated pulley system to get all the dirt out of their claim and to get themselves out of their claim at the end of the day. Insane. It was extremely difficult to work. And so what starts happening is people start to sell their claims to one big company. And this company starts to buy up all of these claims. And eventually this whole area gets consolidated into just one big company. And anybody want to guess what the name of that company is? It's the De Beers company, the one that we all associate with diamonds. Those poor De Beers brothers are probably rolling in their grave because of this conspicuous consumption of diamonds, and it's all in their name. Must have been very frustrating to them. But nobody farms in this area anymore because this is what it looks like now. The big hole, that was all done by hand. It's considered the largest hole ever dug by human work. And it closed in 1914. So it opens in 1870, closes in 1914. It's not open forever, but just in that amount of time, they pull out 15 million carats of diamond. And even though they don't mine in this area, in this mine anymore, there's mines all around in the Kimberley region. Still, there's a lot of economic diamond mining, and lots of diamonds that are on the market today that go into engagement rings are coming from the South African Kimberley area. In fact, from going to having 100% of all of the diamonds being found in the placer deposits, those river gravels. Now we have 55 to 75% of all diamonds come from the diamond ores rather than those placer deposits. You can get so many more diamonds out of a little area if you know where the ore is. So let's talk a little bit about that ore. It turns out to be really weird, okay? This diamond ore, it's actually a volcanic rock. And if you know anything, if you've met me before, you probably know I love volcanoes. This is a volcano that nobody can even imagine. We actually have never seen one erupt. The kimberlite is such a rare volcanic rock that the last time there was a kimberlite eruption was about 1 million years ago. So we really don't have any direct evidence of how these things erupt, but we can figure a lot of things out by studying the rock. So here's a piece of kimberlite. It's been cut in half and polished so you can see everything. And it's a super weird volcanic rock. It's made out of 3 main components. So the molten rock, the magma, the lava, it's all this black stuff. That's like the lava and the stuff that was melted as it was coming up to the surface. And then you have these big pebbly looking things. And you also have ones that, oh, wow, that looks a little bit like a diamond maybe. And there's some garnets and some other stuff. What we're seeing here with these other pieces, these are called xenocryst. And what a xenocryst is it's a foreign crystal. It's a crystal that wasn't there when the kimberlite started to form deep in the earth. It got kind of like swept away like a hitchhiker, or like a flood comes and it kind of, moves a car. And that car isn't part of the flood. It just gets swept away by the flood. And that's what happens with these xenocrysts. And so up to 25% and sometimes even more of the volume of the kimberlite is made out of these other foreign rocks. And then the other part of these kimberlites is they have so much gas. They are mostly, the most of the gas is carbon dioxide, which is what it's in your soda, right? And up to 15% volume. That's a really high volume of gas for a volcanic rock. So these are volcanic rocks that nobody had ever seen before. And they're like, these are so weird. But they start studying them. And what they realize is those xenocrysts, remember, those are the things that got plucked up and kind of hitchhiked on up to the surface. They're made out of mostly garnet and olivine and pyroxene, some kind of very normal minerals, but a very small percentage of them are diamonds. And so here is what some of those diamonds look like. They have this gorgeous crystal shape. Some of them, though, don't. Some of them look like somebody has rubbed them raw. They've totally been abraded. They've maybe looked like somebody has dissolved them. And in fact, that's what's happened. It turns out that this kimberlite, with all the gases and the molten rock and everything, when it grabs those diamonds, it's not a very comfortable environment for those diamonds to exist in. And so they actually start to get like smaller and smaller because they're getting worn away. They're like acid is eating at them. And so sometimes we'll find diamonds that are almost completely rounded like this, just simply because they've been carried up to the surface in a really hostile environment. So these diamond ores, clearly, if they have diamonds in them, they have to have been pretty deep, because remember, our diamonds are pretty deep. And if we're going to have diamonds, being carried up by those kimberlites, the kimberlites have to start below where the diamonds are. So we think that the kimberlites actually are really super deep into the mantle, which is the second layer, the thickest layer, the middle of the earth. And those kimberlites will come up, and as they're erupting up through here, as they're kind of rising up this molten rock, it starts to grab other things. And if it goes through an area that has diamonds, it's going to grab those diamonds. So principally, the diamond ores are these kimberlites. There's also a few other ones. There's called lampriphyres and lamporites, but they're very similar in that they're dragging these diamonds up to the surface. Most commercial production of diamonds is going to be in a kimberlite pipe, which is why we talk about them the most. And when I said they're in a kimberlite pipe, let me show you what I'm talking about. Remember, this is a weird volcano, so it's got to have some kind of an eruption. And this is what it does. Kimberlite volcanism is involving super fast rising up to the surface. So you're really deep in the mantle, and then whatever happens, something changes, some circumstances changes, and all of a sudden that molten rock is allowed to rise. And as it rises really fast. In fact, some people say that it rises all those 200 kilometers in like 10 hours, which is like super incredibly like freight train fast. But what it does, think about when you have a bottle of soda and you're shaking that soda up and then you take the lid off, what happens? All of the gases that were in that soda explode out. And this is exactly what happens with a kimberlite volcanic eruption. So down here, it's got all of these gases in it and it's getting closer and closer up to the surface. And then finally, it gets to the point where the pressure inside of it explodes out and it actually breaks open the earth and creates this really odd looking crater. It kind of looks like a champagne flute, champagne glass, right? And it's wide at the top and it gets long and skinny at the bottom. So they're downward tapering, they become smaller. And this actually turns out to be kind of hard in terms of diamond mining. Because if you think about it, you're mining up here, you've got lots of surface area, yay. But as you get closer, lower and lower down, it starts getting more and more constricted. And your ore is you're going to have less ore, which means you're not going to be able to pull out as many diamonds. You can kind of see the shape of this kimberlite pipe. So that's why they're called pipes, because they kind of look like pipes. Right here, there's two of them. This is up in Canada, the Diavik mine, diamond mines in Canada, up in the Northwestern Territories. And you can see that they are mining and they are trying to get out as much of that kimberlite as they possibly can. And so they are mining all the way down until they can't possibly do it anymore economically. It's too expensive to go deeper. So those are kimberlite pipes. And so people, as soon as they started realizing this, oh my gosh, diamonds are in kimberlite pipes. Let's go find every kimberlite pipe that's in the world and let's dig up diamonds. This is going to be wonderful. Well, it turns out that although there's kimberlite pipes everywhere in the world, you can see here the red and the black dots are the kimberlite pipes. And there's there's lots more in Antarctica. They're covered with snow, so we really can't see them. But now I'm going to show you where we actually can mine for diamonds. And that's a pretty significantly smaller amount of places where actual economic diamond mining happens. It actually turns out that only 3% of the world's diamond mines, of the world's kimberlite pipes actually even have diamonds. And an even smaller amount can actually be economically mined. They have enough diamonds that you can actually make money pulling them out of the ground. So why is that true? Well, if that kimberlite, as it's coming up to the surface, doesn't pass through a region that has diamonds, then it's not going to have diamonds in it. And so only 3% of these kimberlites actually have passed through a region that have diamonds. And so they actually will have those diamonds in the rock. And otherwise, there's not going to be any. You'll notice that poor United States, we have a little diamond mine, but it's not economic. It's a hobby thing. In Arkansas, perhaps you've heard of it's Crater of Diamonds and stuff like that. And you go pay a fee and whatever you find, you get to keep. But it's not an economic diamond mine. Nobody can make money doing that. When you found your kimberlite pipe, and it's a kimberlite pipe that actually has diamonds in it, then you have to find out if it has enough diamonds to actually make it worthwhile. You have to move 2 to 3 tons of rocks to get a 1 carat diamond. So for every 1 carat diamond that comes out of a diamond mine, you have to move 2 to 3 tons of rock. And so this is an extremely expensive proposition. This is one of the reasons why diamonds are so expensive. It is hard to get them out of the ground. They use big earth moving equipment. They move tons and tons of dirt, and then they process it and then they dump it in another place. So this are tailings. And this picture back here is of the Mir diamond mine in Siberia, Russia. And you can see that they actually are following that same shape of the diamond pipe as it goes down. And all these people are living over here. And that just seems pretty scary to me. I'm sure they're not quite as close as it looks right there, but don't go walking out at night. You might fall in or something. I don't know. Here's another picture of a diamond mine. And just to give you an idea about the size of these earth moving trucks, here is an SUV. Here is one of those earth moving trucks. And that dot is one of those dump trucks. So we're talking massive, massive, expensive equipment that has to be used to be able to get the ore out of the ground. In the background, we see one of the diamond mines in Australia that actually just very recently closed. It closed in November of 2020 because they are now to the point that it is more expensive to get the diamonds out than it is then they can sell the diamonds for. So it's no longer economic. So once you have all of this diamond ore that you pulled out of the ground, you crush it up, you put it onto a conveyor belt essentially, and then you run that conveyor belt so that the diamonds fall off the edge. As they're falling off the edge, there's something really cool about diamonds. They fluoresce. If you have an X-ray source and you hit it, they'll actually like kind of shine back at you. And so to take advantage of that, this X-ray source is constantly hitting all of this rock that's coming off. If it gets a return, which means it's a diamond, it actually does a puff of air, and that forces the diamond to go into this different bin, and all the rest of the rock goes into the waste bin, which then they do this again for and again and again, because they know they can't get everything out of the first time. So you can't go say, hey, can I go look through your waste bin and go find diamonds? They're not going to let you do that. But anyway, so that's how you do it. Instead of having to actually go through it by hand, because that would take years. Remember, 2 to 3 tons of rock for 1 carat. And so you have to have it automated or it's just not even going to be able to work. So now we've got our diamond. Let's talk about what they look like and what makes them valuable. We've talked a little bit about the rarity. About only 3% of all kimberlite pipes have diamonds. And of that 3%, only like there's less than 100 of them that actually can be mined. And so they're very rare. They're hard to get out of the ground, and they're the hardest substance known to man. So they're not very easy to cut and polish. All of these things are some of the very logical reasons why diamonds are expensive and valuable, why you have to pay so much for them. There is a certain amount of artificial inflation built into it, though. For 100 years, the De Beers Company actually controlled the rough diamond market. And during that time, it was a monopoly, and they would always make it so that the price of diamonds went up every year. So that meant for if you were in the business, that was great for you, but for the consumer, that meant that there was an artificial inflation. Even though the De Beers Company lost control of that monopoly in the last decade of the 20th century, we're still seeing that inflation. It's moderated some, but we still have these other factors that are legitimate why they are so valuable, why they cost so much money. One of the earliest examples of a diamond ring we have is from 2nd century Rome, 3rd century Rome. And it actually is the actual diamond crystal that is just set into the ring. Now this diamond crystal hasn't been cut, hasn't been polished, nothing's happened. It was plucked out of the ground and it was put into a ring. And the reason why is because the Romans did not have the technology to cut them. It's not until quite a bit later that we start to actually understand how to cut diamonds. So let's talk about that a little bit. Here's a gorgeous pink diamond from the Argyle mine in Australia. That's the one that just closed. And here is a beautiful diamond ring with this a cut pink diamond in it. So you get your piece of rough. That's what this is when it hasn't been cut or anything like that. And you've got to do something with it. So we're going to go through the different steps: sorting, and then sawing, and then shaping essentially, and then polishing. So when you're sorting and planning and marking it up, you're like saying, okay, let's put all the good ones over here. Let's put all the medium ones over here. Let's put all of the not as good ones here. And then what they do is they actually take them and they scan them into a computer. They get a scan of it, a 3D scan of it. Then they use a computer-aided design program to see what the best and most valuable cuts they could get out of this diamond. So for example, this diamond, this is the shape of the diamond. All of the green stuff is the flaws in the diamond. And so you have to try to avoid those, right? Because you don't want those in your diamond. And then he can choose the diamond planner. He can choose what kind of things he's thinking about doing. Oh, I'm going to put a big one here and a smaller one here, but it's got to be at this weird angle. And then this one can go here, and he can change things around. And then he starts marking it up so that it's ready to be cut. So if this is the hardest substance in the world, how do you cut it? It turns out that hardness doesn't necessarily mean that you can't break it. Hardness, remember, is just the fact that you can't scratch it. But a lot of minerals will have a weak part in their bonding. So remember all of those carbon bonds that we saw that were covalently bonded? Well, some of them are bonded to like 6 other carbons, and that's a really strong bond. but some of them are attached to just like 2 or 3, and that's a little bit weaker spot. So if you were to hit it with a hammer, you could actually break it on those weaker bonds. And so that's what they used to do. That's how they used to cut diamonds, is they would need to cleave them. So you would actually tap it with a hammer and a wedge, and it would break it right where you wanted it. We don't do that very much anymore because there were only limited places you could do that, and it was super dangerous because every so often you would tap it and it would just shatter and your diamond is gone. So you spend all that money and now you don't have a diamond. First, there started the diamond saw, which actually can saw a diamond in half. It's slow, but it works because there's diamonds embedded into the saw wheel. And so a diamond can cut a diamond, and so it would saw through. But it would take like 2 hours to be able to get through a 1 carat diamond. Nowadays, almost everyone does lasers. And the lasers are so much faster. There's a couple of different techniques you can do, but you'll see it's very computer automated and things like that. And you can do a carat diamond in like 20 minutes. So it really ups your production, as it were. Next, you need to facet the diamond. Now, when you look at a faceted gemstone, you'll see the light reflects off of flat planes on the gemstone. Those are the facets. Those facets are very exact. They're the exact size. They're the exact angle to each other and things like that. And it's really quite it's very skilled work because you have to get those angles and everything exactly right. And so these are just some pictures of doing it by hand. Doing it by hand? What? This is the 21st century. Actually, we still mostly do this by hand. There are automated machines to do it with, to do machines, but they're expensive and they're not everywhere. So most of the places where the diamond polishing is happening, it's happening by hand. And we're talking polishing the little teeny tiny diamonds that are like the accent stones up to like 2 and 3 and 4 carats are being polished in these huge rooms where everybody is doing it. So like this gal, she's looking at to make sure the angles are right. This guy, he's actually got his hands at a very particular angle so that he can get that polishing just perfect. So I keep talking. We're just going to pause for a second here, and we're just going to talk for a second about what is a carat? Because I keep talking about like, oh, a 1 carat diamond, and you have to move 2 or 3 tons of rock to get a 1 carat diamond. What the heck is a carat? Well, it's not a carrot, okay? It's not like Bugs Bunny's carrot. What a carat is talking about, it's a word derived from the word for the carob seed. It turns out that there's a tree that is found pretty much ubiquitously all around the Mediterranean basin. And so you could find a carob tree in Algeria on one side of the Mediterranean, and you could find one in Turkey on the other side of the Mediterranean. And all of them had these little tiny seeds that were really regular. It actually turns out that 1 carob seed is 0.2 grams. And so 1 carob seed is a carat in diamonds. And so it's very, very small. Actually, all you have to do is you weigh your gemstone and then you multiply it by 5, and you end up with how many carat weight it is, because that's the way the conversion works. Now, one of the things that is super confusing when you're talking about jewelry is there are 2 different kinds of carats. There's carats with a C, and that's talking about the weight of a gemstone. And there's carats with a K, and that's talking about the purity of the gold. So they're completely different, even though they come from the same root word. They are completely different measurements. And basically, while this is weight, this C carat is weight, the K carat is how many parts of 24 parts of a metal is gold. So 24 karat gold is pure gold. 14 karat gold is 14 parts of gold, and the other 10 are some other type of minerals. So metal, silver, copper, whatever. So just so you know, they are completely different. They don't even refer to the same types of things, and yet they're the exact same word, which is a little annoying, but what are you going to do? So let's look at what happens when you actually take a rough diamond and you shape it and you cut and polish it. And what I want you to really pay attention to is the carats up here. So this was a piece of diamond that was found from the Quay mine, that's in Canada, in 2016. And it's this gorgeous yellow color. And it's 65, almost 66 carats large. They take it to a master gem cutter, and he spends quite a long time looking at it and trying to decide what he's going to do. And then he starts to slowly shape it using lasers, okay? So he's lasering it into the shape. every time he does something to it, you'll notice that it loses more of its carat weight. You're actually taking away parts of it. You're removing the stone. And by the time you get to this point here, you go from almost 66 to about 37 carats. You've lost almost half of the weight of the diamond in just this step, but we're not even done yet. This may look done, but it's not quite done. So remember, we started at 66, and by the time we are all the way done, it's all the way down to 30 carats. And yet, by cutting it in such a precise, beautiful way and removing all of that extra stuff, you've made this absolutely stunning diamond that now can be carved, that now can be sold for millions and millions of dollars. Kirsten asks a great question. She says, can you use the removed parts of the diamond to make smaller diamonds? And it's true. I'm going to go back a slide. This part right here is actually made into, cut into another stone, a smaller stone. So it's not like it's completely wasted or anything, but you no longer have this 66 carat diamond, you have a 30 carat diamond. And most diamonds go through that. So you have to consider that if you have a 1 carat diamond on your engagement ring, that actually is was started out life as probably 2 carats, but you have to remove all of those parts. All right, so let's say you are at the point where you are going to go buy a diamond. And when you go to the jewelry store, they're going to say, let us tell you all about the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are carat, color, clarity, and cut. Carat weight we already talked about, but one thing you need to keep in mind is that carat weight is actually really important in diamonds because the larger carat weights are far rarer. So let's say you have 6 1 carat diamonds and you have one 6 carat diamond. The value is not the same, even though you have 6 carats of diamond in both of them. The fact that you have a big one that is 6 carats means that it is far more expensive than those 6 1 carat ones because they're rarer, and therefore that means it's more expensive. So the carat weight is important. That's going to really up your costs. And here's just some examples of some of the carat weights you might see. Here's some rich people. Jennifer Aniston, this is her 8 carat diamond ring, and here's Kate Upton's 8 carat diamond engagement ring. And the prices really vary. So here's a 10 carat diamond, and it's worth $630,000 for that diamond. Whereas this smaller one is worth considerably something far more in anybody's budget. And that's because the larger diamonds are rarer. Next thing that we talk about when we talk about diamond value factors is the color. And the color in the diamonds that we put on our rings is mostly colorless to slightly yellow. And because yellow diamonds are really common, the more colorless it is, the more expensive it is because they're rarer. So yellow diamonds are super common and clear diamonds are not, and therefore that means they're going to be far more expensive. And so here is D diamond is considered totally colorless. It's the best color grade. And a Z diamond is getting into very, very yellow. And there's going to be a really big price difference. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this. So maybe you think, well, I don't want a yellow diamond. Oh my goodness. Well, it turns out that to the casual observer, or even to somebody who's like staring at their diamond ring for a long time, you're not going to be able to actually tell much of a difference between, like, say, the D color and like the I color. It's really going to be hard to see just with your eyes. There's a difference in this. And what's more, if you choose to put it into yellow gold, then that's actually going to make your diamond look a little yellow. So you might as well start with a slightly more yellow diamond so that you don't spend as much money, because it's already going to be a little yellow as it reflects the color of the metal. Just a tip for you: go spend your money somewhere else. Get a diamond that's slightly yellow. Remember how I talked about there's these cool colored diamonds? Well, in its purest form, if it's all just carbon, diamond is colorless. But most diamonds, Mother Nature doesn't want to do everything the same way every time. And so most diamonds are not pure and perfect. And so sometimes you'll have all these carbon atoms, and then you'll have this random nitrogen atom that got in there and just kind of slid in and was part of the group. And that actually can make a very yellow diamond. Pink diamonds are actually created when the diamond got squashed. And so that means that its crystal structure got switched a little bit. This is a defect in it. And that's what gives you the pink diamonds. This gorgeous, absolutely amazing necklace is offered by De Beers, and I have no idea how expensive it is because anytime it says price available on request, well, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it, right? And so, but every single stone that you see in this necklace is a diamond, and some of them are uncut, and so they're taking advantage of the natural beauty of the diamond before it's even been cut, and are making this gorgeous statement piece. Now, of course, we can't talk about diamonds, colored diamonds, unless we talk about the Hope diamond. Now, Dr. DeRay, he was the one who introduced me at the beginning. He took us, the grad students and undergrad students 20-something years ago on a field trip. And we went up and down the Appalachian Mountains in New England. And our very last stop was Washington, D.C. And we got into Washington, D.C. about 2 hours before our plane was going to take off. And so he said, okay, everybody, you have like 45 minutes to go to one of the Smithsonian museums and see what you want to, and then you have to be back to the van so that we can get to the plane on time. And we almost missed the plane as it was. And so most of us all ran straight to the Museum of Natural History, right all the way down the stairs, back to the back room where the Hope Diamond was. We all looked at the Hope Diamond, oohed and awed, and then ran back up to the vans. So I have seen the Hope Diamond in person for about 2 minutes, but it's really quite amazing. It's this gorgeous, huge, blue diamond. I mean, blue, it's amazing. But it's not the only amazing colored diamond. There's this gorgeous, it's called the Golden Empress, and it is 132 carats, this yellow diamond. This one is a purple diamond, which is one of the rarest colors, this gorgeous deep purple. It's called the Argyle Violet. And this little tiny, this thing is only 2.5 carats big. And the 2.5 carats, its value is unknown, but they think it's probably worth about $17 million. Like the person who bought it is not like publicizing how much they spent on it, but it's 2 carats and it's like $17 million because it's that gorgeous purple color. Here is a very pretty ring that you could buy yourself if you have $63,000. This is a 3-carat pink diamond ring. And then this is probably one of my favorites because it's got this absolutely gorgeous green color, which is not what you would expect for a diamond. But this is called the Aurora Green, and it's 5 carats, and it was sold for $16 million. So, you know, if you have a little bit of money and you want to donate some of these stones to the geology department, we will take them off your hands and you will not need to worry about them anymore. So that's color. When we talk about diamond value, we also talk about the clarity. And that's basically, is there a lot of junk inside of the diamond? Does the diamond look clean? And a lot of diamonds don't. This is a diamond I took a picture of a couple of weeks ago. And you can actually see the flaws. It's in the microscope is where I took it, but you can see the flaws in it. This is a fairly heavily included diamond, and it has a pretty low clarity grade. The interesting thing about these is that if you have a flawless diamond and has absolutely no inclusions, that's really super rare and it's going to be super, super expensive. But most diamonds, especially those being sold in the commercial jewelry stores, are going to be just barely slightly included. They're not going to be very included. And so really, if you can't see it when you're looking at it, I wouldn't worry too much about the clarity. There's one exception. There is a specific kind of diamond that has become very popular on the market in the last 3 years or so, and they're called salt and pepper diamonds. And here's an example of one. And you can see that this diamond has a huge number of inclusions in it. They're a little less expensive than regular diamonds, and you still get the bling of having a big diamond. But the problem is remember at the beginning, we talked about how diamonds are super practical for a ring you're going to wear all the time because they resist scratching. They resist, they're pretty sturdy. These ones are not. These salt and pepper diamonds have all of these flaws inside of them. And that means if you hit them just wrong, you just hit it on like a desk or something, you could actually shatter the diamond. So you would want to, if you have a salt and pepper diamond, you would want to treat it a little nicer than you would a regular diamond. The last of the 4 C's is called the cut. And we're not going to go too much into the cut. My students get to definitely play with with all of these numbers, and they have to do all these angles, and it's this big, hard, horrible lab that they all make it through and feel very accomplished for doing it because it's part of evaluating the diamond, they're praising the diamond. But basically what it is you want to cut the diamond exactly right so that when light goes in the top, it bounces around on all of those facets and comes back up the top. So that's what you see. And the problem is that if you don't cut those at the exact right angles, you end up with darker spots, like for example, in this deep cut diamond, or you end up with these really weird light spots that looks like an eye is staring at you in a shallow cut diamond. Whereas if you look at this ideal cut diamond, you'll see that it's very perfect and very, it's what you expect a diamond. It's got all the reflection of light that you want to see from it. Somewhat related to cut is the shape. And there's a lot of different shapes in the world. And the popular shapes that are out there right now are slightly more expensive, but not a lot more expensive. The most standard one that everybody has is the round brilliant. That's really the classic shape. But all of these other ones come in and out of style. The one interesting thing that you might want to consider when you are considering the shape of your diamond is how will it look on your finger? So I want to show you these two pictures again. Remember, this is Jennifer Aniston and this is Kate Upton. They both have an 8-carat diamond. Do those look the same size? They don't. Okay, they're both 8 carats, but Kate Upton's is the more standard round cut that actually looks smaller than this cushion cut of Jennifer Aniston's. So it kind of depends on what you're going for. If you want a lot of the sparkle, you should go for the round cut. But if you want a lot of the flash, you want to go for a bigger cut so that it looks pretty nifty on your finger. So as we talked about all these things, and for the last part of our lecture, and I'll go about another 10 minutes or so, if that's okay with everybody, hopefully it is. We want to think a little bit about the ethics of diamonds. You've probably all heard of blood diamonds or conflict diamonds, and those are diamonds that are mined to basically fund a war of some kind. And these types of diamonds, they're not being mined in any type of environmentally friendly way. For example, here in Sierra Leone, these are huge mountains of contaminated rock that's been dragged out of the ground. The diamonds have been extracted and then it's just been dumped. And I don't know if you can see this, but those are people, those little tiny dots along the edge. So this is this huge mountain of this totally contaminated stuff. There's also a lot of exploitation of vulnerable populations. And what I mean by that, I mean like children and economically disadvantaged people who are being forced to work in these mines in very dangerous conditions. Now, not every diamond that is mined from the earth comes from a situation where it could be called a blood or a conflict diamond. And the perfect example of that is what's happening in Canada today. Canada, the Canadian diamond mines have only been running since the late 90s, and they are extremely ethically focused. So they have really good relationships with the Indigenous people on which lands they are leasing. They have plans for putting everything back together after they're done mining it. And they also are dedicated in making sure that every single diamond that comes out of Canada is marked as a Canadian diamond so that you know it's not just somebody saying, hey, this is a Canadian diamond, you can buy it, but it's really from Sierra Leone. They actually laser engrave Canada and the maple leaf on every diamond that comes out so that you can know that it was not mined in a very, in an exploitive way. But if you don't want to worry about that, there's another option, and that's synthetic diamonds. Synthetic diamonds are not mined from the earth at all. However, don't mix up synthetic diamonds with substitute diamonds or diamond simulants. Diamond simulants are like cubic zirconia. They're not even made out of the same stuff. A synthetic diamond is an actual real diamond. Same chemical properties, same optical properties, same physical properties. They are essentially identical to the diamonds that we mine. Now, they're called synthetic diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, not mined diamonds. Some of them are called cultured diamonds, like cultured pearls. But in this lecture, we're going to talk about them in terms of like a synthetic diamond, or perhaps sometimes I will say a lab-created or lab-grown diamond. And here's some examples. They don't actually look like diamonds when they are first come out of their laboratory. But then when you cut them, you literally cannot tell the difference. Here's a natural diamond. Here's a diamond that is formed through a method called CVD. We'll talk about in a second. And here's one that's formed in a different method that's called HPHT. So let's talk about those. Remember that we have to have a lot of pressure and a very specific temperature range to have diamond formation. And what the HPHT diamonds, high pressure, high temperature synthetic diamonds are, is basically you are making a chamber that has all that pressure and all the right temperature in it. And then you have this dissolved carbon that latches onto a little tiny baby diamond, and it creates a larger diamond out of it. Now, CVD diamonds, which is chemical vapor deposition, it's very similar in that it has a diamond seed, but instead of having to get those high temperatures and pressures, you actually make a plasma by using a microwave. Not like the microwave you have in your house, but a microwave. And what it does is it goes through carbon gas, and it actually causes the carbon gas to rain down like snow onto these little diamonds, these little seed diamonds, and that creates these CVD diamonds. Now, regardless of whether you have an HPHT or CVD diamond, those diamonds are essentially the same as real diamonds, and they have a price that's similar to that. And so we'll look at those prices in just a minute as we compare all the different types of options you have. However, by saying that there's no environmental or ethical concerns about synthetic diamonds is not entirely correct. You have to consider the very large amounts of electrical energy that it takes to create the right pressure and temperature conditions, or to create the plasma beam. And so it's not like these are no impact on the environment, but they have a different impact upon the environment. So let's say that you're like, no, I don't even need a diamond. I just want something that looks like a diamond. This is where we get into diamond simulants. These are our imposters. These are our fake diamonds. And we couldn't have an imposter without booting him off the ship as it goes away. But when we talk about these fake diamonds, these diamond simulants, we're talking about something that's imitating something else. If you have a piece of glass and you shape it like a diamond and you put it in a ring, that's a diamond simulant, even though it's a piece of glass. It could be a piece of plastic. It could be a natural mineral, like a piece of quartz that you pull out of the ground, but you're pretending like it's a diamond. And so that's what makes the diamond simulants. And the most common diamond simulants today are, well, and as long as people have cared about diamonds, people have had diamond simulants. I mean, you've had the fakes as long as you've had the real thing. But it's only been recently that our fakes have gotten really good. So here's some of the early fakes. So here's an actual diamond, and here's some of the early fakes, and they're just not as good. Like, that's not the right color. And well, what's going on with these colors on the edge? And that just looks kind of dull. So there's lots of different options, but starting in about 1976, we get probably the most famous, and it's cubic zirconia. This is a man-made diamond. I mean, a man-made substance, okay? So it's not something that's naturally occurring. You don't go mine your cubic zirconia. You make it in a lab. But it's not made out of carbon at all. It has no carbon in it, so it's not a diamond. It's made out of zirconia and zirconium and oxygen. And the hardness, this is the important thing to look at here. The hardness is about 8 to 8.5. So it's not quite as hard as a real diamond, but it's up there. And these have only been really in commercial production since 1976. So it hasn't been that long that these have been something that you could buy as a diamond simulant. The other most common one is even more recent. And it's only been since 1998 that we've had commercial moissanite for jewelry. And moissanite is not, it has some carbon in it, but it also has some silica in it. So it's not a diamond, it's a diamond simulant, but it's actually a really good diamond simulant. It's got a good hardness. It's got some great sparkle to it. It even can fool those little inexpensive diamond testers you can buy on Amazon for like 15 bucks because it has a really high thermal conductivity, just like a diamond, but it's not a diamond. It is made out of a different product. It has a very different shape to it and everything when it's being created and things like that. And once again, all moissanite in jewelry is man-made. And you'll only find moissanite in jewelry that has been made since 1998 because that's when it hit the markets. So let's look at some pros and cons of these two. Cubic zirconia, the biggest pro of it is so cheap. Like, you can buy 3-carat cubic zirconia on Amazon for like $7, okay? Shipped, next day shipping to your house, all right? It's abundant. And really, somebody walking by you is not going to be able to tell that it's not a diamond when it's new. The problem is that because it's softer than diamond, it actually scratches. And as it scratches, it starts to look cloudy over time. And so what they recommend generally, if you're going to have a cubic zirconia in an engagement ring, you're going to want to be prepared to replace it every couple of years to keep it looking like a diamond. But still, if it's only $7 to replace, I mean, that's not a bad calculus right there. And that makes a lot of sense. Moissanite is more expensive than cubic zirconia. It is the hardest diamond simulant on the market, and so it doesn't scratch very badly, but it still can scratch. So just like the cubic zirconia, it's indistinguishable from a diamond by the casual observer, but it still can get scratched. It's more expensive to replace, and it's often kind of got a yellowy tint to it. And the one other thing about moissanite that sometimes will trip up people is that if you sparkle it in the light and you get those colors, those rainbow colors like you do with a diamond, they actually are brighter in a moissanite. And that makes it look less like a diamond because we're not expecting to see those really bright colors. But still, it's not a bad idea. So let's look at all these categories of diamonds that we just talked about. We talked about cubic zirconia. Here's a 3-carat cubic zirconia in 14-karat gold. Here's a 3-carat moissanite in 14-karat gold. Look, Amazon, woohoo. Here is a 3-carat synthetic lab-created diamond in 18-karat gold. And here is a natural 3-carat diamond in 18-karat gold. And just look at those prices. We go from $300 to $1,800 to $15,000 to $45,000. So here's my question for you. Did your answer change? So let's put up the next poll. And it's basically the same question. Here it is. What kind of diamond do you plan to buy now? Or what kind of gemstone do you plan to buy now? And if you've already purchased one, if you were going to purchase it again, would you do something different? And so I'll be interested to see what people say. We'll just watch this come up. It's really interesting. I've had students come to me and say, well, why in the world would I buy a natural diamond? And then they take my class, Geology 105, and they're like, but diamonds are so cool because they're so deep in the earth and they come up with the kimberlites and all this stuff. And so then they like change their mind to like, they do want a natural diamond because of all the cool geology. Whereas say a chemistry major may say, oh my gosh, we can make diamonds. I'm so getting a synthetic diamond because that's really meaningful to me as a chemist. So, all right, I'm going to let the last, I'll give you another, like just a couple of minutes, couple of seconds, and then we'll share the polling. Okay, this is really interesting. I'm kind of fascinated by this. All right, I'm going to end the polling. 3, 2, 1, now. All right, share results. So do you remember last time? 50% of you were saying that you would buy a natural diamond, and now fewer of you will. More of you said moissanite this next time. The last time, the other one was different gemstone. It was like 11%. More of you are interested in a synthetic diamond now. So that was really kind of fun. Anyway, so as you're considering your diamond as we come up on Valentine's Day, remember that it actually doesn't matter what gemstone you purchase for your beloved or what gemstone you choose for your engagement ring. It has more to do about who you're going to marry and if you're going to work hard on your marriage and make it successful. And it really doesn't matter if you have a $5 ring from Walmart or a $45,000 ring from Cartier. And I want to thank you so much for coming to my lecture. And are there any questions? And so let's see here. Let me see if I can figure out one thing. Now I'm gonna, if you want to unmute yourself, you may, and you can ask me a question.
There's not much that can scratch something that's hardness of 8 or higher.
It's interesting, isn't it? That's a really good point. 8's pretty hard, but if you remember the graph I showed you, it's not just like 8, 9, and 10. It's more like 8 is here and 9 is here and 10 is like up at the ceiling. So it's quite a bit harder. And it turns out just through day-to-day life, you'll actually end up scratching moissanite or cubic zirconia. And so a cubic zirconia gemstone actually will start to look kind of cloudy and it will lose that luster within about 3 years. It's kind of weird because you wouldn't think that would happen. So kind of interesting. Let's see, what gem is in my ring? Well, okay, so this is not my engagement ring because my husband loves me very much and he let me take my diamond out of my engagement ring so that I could study it, and I've never put it back in yet. So, but it's really a cool diamond. The diamond this is a sapphire. The diamond I have for my engagement diamond is actually my husband's grandmother's great aunt's, I think. And so it's a really, really old diamond, and it's actually not cut in a very traditional way anymore, which makes it even more exciting for me. So anyway, so that's what I have. Let's see here. Liz asks, are diamonds more or less expensive? I mean, are emeralds more or less expensive than diamonds? I'm asking because I like emeralds. Emeralds, a good, really good emerald will be more exciting than your normal diamond that you will find in an engagement ring. However, emeralds are fragile. They're more fragile. They have a lot of inclusions inside of it, other stuff inside of it. And so they're a scarier one to have on a ring that you're going to be wearing all the time. But it kind of depends. You can buy emeralds for cheaper than you can diamond, but a really good one will be right up there with it. Laura asks, in what tectonic environments would you find kimberlite pipes forming? Subduction zones? We actually are not entirely sure, Laura. We think that there is something going on with the subduction zones that perhaps stirs up the mantle, the conditions in the mantle, but it definitely wouldn't correspond to any subduction zones that we see today, because most of the kimberlite pipes that we are aware of are something like 100 million years old. And so we would have to reconstruct what was going on there. But there does seem to be something going on with subduction zones. Also possibly with the idea of, this is kind of speculative, but the idea of the thickness of the craton does some weird things to the underlying mantle that then perhaps is one of the reasons why we see a lot of kimberlites in those thicker areas. That's not the only place they can be, but we do see a lot of them there. Do synthetic diamonds come in every color like natural diamonds? They do, and they are absolutely gorgeous. So if you wanted to have a beautiful blue diamond like the Hope Diamond, you could totally buy it for fairly inexpensive amounts of money. Dave Runyon asks, Dr. Tracy Hall, his process is still used to create man-made diamonds. In fact, his process is the HPHT process. So this is a kind of a fun story if you're connected to BYU at all. At BYU, so there's a gentleman by the name of Tracy Hall, and in the 1940s, he was working for GE, and they were trying to be the first people to make a synthetic diamond. And he actually was part of the team, but they weren't working well together. And so he kind of went off on his own and figured it out. And then, so GE has the patent on that, Tracy Hall didn't, but then they didn't treat him very well. So he quit and he came to teach at BYU, and he refined his process, and he created what's known as the tetrahedral press, which is mostly the type of press, even if it's not the exact same kind, it's the type of press that is now used for all the HPHT diamonds. So he was a BYU professor when he figured that out. And in fact, the room where we do our lab, I was told that was his laboratory back before they renovated the Eyring Science Center. So it's kind of fun. Do you know? Yeah. So Lorraine asks, do I know when the diamond became the go-to engagement ring? Really, it starts in about 1890. And De Beers is getting all this consolidated amount of diamonds coming out of the ground. And they're like, we've got to figure out what to do with them. So they start to very heavily emphasize the idea that you need a diamond. You need a diamond to show your love. And they were very, very successful. So it's been about 140 years for that. One of my children asks, how long does it usually take to make a synthetic diamond? And it depends. HPHT can take several weeks to months. And if you want a big one, it would take even longer. CVDs is a matter of days. So that's pretty awesome that it can be that quick. Dave Runyon says, please explain the magnetic property of diamond. Now, diamonds should not be magnetic. However, some CVD diamonds and some HPHT diamonds will be magnetic. And especially HPHT diamonds, if they get too much of that surrounding metallic fluid into them, you can actually pick up the diamond with a magnet, which is not what you would want to do. I mean, that's like too much, and it's not going to be a very attractive looking diamond if you can do that. But I took a class from GIA, and they had one of those there, so we got to actually take a magnet and pick up the diamond. It's like, whoa, that should not happen. But generally speaking, they should not be magnetic at all, unless it's one of the synthetic ones. But not every synthetic one is going to be magnetic, so you can't use that as a really easy, quick and dirty I can tell this is a synthetic diamond or not, because not every synthetic diamond will be magnetic. Carter B asks, are salt and pepper diamonds still harder than most other gemstones? They're still hard, for sure they're still hard, but because they have the flaws inside of them, they actually are more prone to cleavage, that breaking, because there's a little bit inside of them that isn't those strong bonds. And so if you whack it with something, it's going to break along those inclusions. So anytime you have a heavily included diamond, you're more worried about its durability, because just even hitting it a little bit could cause that cleavage to happen. Will more mines start closing? It seems like there will be an endpoint, Lorraine asks, and that is true. What we're seeing right now is that as our expectations for our stewardship of the earth, environmental stewardship, are increasing. This generation that's upcoming is very concerned about what kind of a world they're inheriting and what kind of things we have to be worried about. And because of that, more people are starting to turn to either synthetic diamonds, diamond simulants, and on also vintage stuff. So buying one that is like from that has already been mined and has already been used and things like that. And because of that, they are seeing a slight downturn in the demand for diamonds. Now, whether that will continue, I'm not quite sure, but it gets more and more expensive to mine responsibly. And so therefore the prices are going to have to go up, which is going to create some interesting things going on with the supply and demand situation. So Karen asks, yes, synthetic diamonds, are they labeled in some way so that we can tell that they are not natural? And yes, if you are buying from a reputable dealer, they will always tell you that a synthetic diamond is a synthetic diamond. And most synthetic diamonds that are sold in the United States have already been laser inscribed. You have to use a magnifying glass to be able to see it because it's so little, but they are laser inscribed with the word synthetic on them. However, there are very unscrupulous people. And so there are a lot of machines that are being manufactured right now that actually will be able to tell what kind, whether it's natural or synthetic. There's one that GIA has, it's a mere $5,000, but it's not probably something that we need to buy at BYU for our little diamond lab that we do twice a year. We don't actually need that. But, and so there are other ways to find out if it's a synthetic by looking at it under certain types of UV light and looking at the way some of the fluorescence happens. But most of the time they're going to be labeled. What else would I recommend to have in an engagement ring? Well, really, honestly, I think you should go with what you love. If I were to redesign my engagement ring, I'd probably still put a diamond in it because I'm a sucker for tradition and I'm a sucker for the geology and stuff like that. But I'd probably also put some more color on it, like maybe have rubies along the side or something like that. I'd probably pick one of the harder gemstones like rubies and sapphires. They're 9 on the Mohs hardness scale. Just because they'll be more sturdy and I'll be less worried about them. Awesome. Are there any other questions? Well, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who came tonight. I really enjoyed being able to talk to you all, and I hope you learned some fun stuff and that you had a good time. And I also hope you have a great weekend. It's Valentine's Day and the 3-day weekend, so hopefully you will have a fabulous time.
Keryn, thank you so much. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Well, big applause.
Thank you very much. And if anybody has questions, you're always welcome to email me. My email address is really easy to remember. It's volcano@gmail.com. So if ever you have a question about anything, you're welcome to contact me. And I will be putting up a recording of that. So if you do want a copy of, like a link to the recording of this lecture, you are welcome to email me and request it. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the meeting now, but thank you so much for coming and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Keryn.